Hey everybody, Sci-Fighter here with another squad briefing. This list is called Dauntlessness. It's fearless, it's in your face, and it is ruthless. And it does so with some unconventional upgrades. Let's take a look. Our first pilot is going to be Captain Boykin. Generally thought of as okay. He's pilot skill 4, and his ability is that when he overlaps an enemy ship with his maneuver, he does 1 damage. No green dice are rolled. Biggs doesn't get to say, no, you have to run into me. You just hit whoever you want to, and then you do a free damage. So how do we take this and make it better? How do we take this and stretch it into something amazing? Well, first thing we're going to do is we're going to take this Dauntless title. The Dauntless title allows us to get the action we would have otherwise missed out on for overlapping an enemy ship, and we get to perform an action anyway. We do take a stress at the end of the action, but I'd rather take an action than miss out totally, especially with the upgrades that we have in mind. The action that we're going to want to be taking, if we can, is going to be Daredevil. Daredevil is an upgrade card you don't see anywhere. It's thought of as a overcosted boost upgrade, and I understand how you can see that. It allows you to utilize a 1 hard turn after you complete whatever maneuver it is you dialed up, but it's more than that, especially on Boykin or a large ship that doesn't have access to something like a 1 hard. It allows you to turn in really tight, and it allows you to even almost Talon roll in a way. And if you don't believe me, this is what you can do in a single round of movement. You can dial up a 2 hard turn, and then you utilize Daredevil, and now you're 180 degrees. And if we take a look at the range bands, it's easy to eyeball as well, because you're almost exactly range 1 from where you started. So it's a nice, easy to judge move, and now you've essentially Talon rolled, and now you can chase a ship down that might have tried to blow past you, so you couldn't hit them. It allows you to really just stay in the fight with Boykin and not get outranged. So, how can we take this Daredevil card and make it something worthwhile? Well, Daredevil is not a boost action. It is actually a maneuver. So we use that 1 hard template, and if we overlap a ship, we can still perform a Daredevil action. And that allows Captain Boykin to do a 2nd damage to whatever ship he was running into. So now we've taken our pilot ability that people are like, okay, I could see where that would be useful, and now we've doubled it. Daredevil does have some drawbacks in that after you perform the action, you're going to take a stress, and if you don't have a boost upgrade, you're going to have to roll 2 red dice and suffer whatever comes up. That can be dangerous. Boykin might have a lot of health, but we don't want to be taking anything where crits are involved. So we're going to offset that. We're going to use engine upgrade, so we don't have to roll those red dice. It also gives us access to the boost action, which is really nice on a large ship, as it allows you to go insanely fast. Faster than small ships can. Even though we can only do a 4 forward normally, we can move with the boost action a total of 4, 6, 7, 9 ship lengths of speed ahead of ourselves. This is farther than the range ruler. It's faster than Darth Vader can even go with his double actions. We can catch up to whoever we need to. If they tried to outdistance Boykin and try to run away from him trying to ram in. So that by itself is already a nice addition with that boost action. But offsetting those red dice is really nice. We're also going to take Inspiring Recruit. So Inspiring Recruit, when we would remove a stress token, we can remove 2. So now when we Dauntless and take a stress, to Daredevil and take another stress, we can remove both of those, and we can Daredevil every turn if we want, getting both damages in for free. And now we are ramming people twice as often, twice as hard. Boshek is going to round out some of our crew slots. He's another card you don't see very often. It allows us to make the owner of a ship that Boykin is touching change their maneuver to an adjacent maneuver on their dial. You have to have a little bit of foreknowledge about an opponent dial, or at least how dials are generally set up, to have an idea of what might be one to the left or one to the right of the maneuver that they selected. But ultimately, you're going to really mess with somebody's day. The mind games in this card are both ways, in that an opponent could see you coming, knows you have Bowshek, so I'm going to dial up the incorrect move, the one I don't want to do. So that way when you activate Bowshek, I can dial in now the one I wanted to do all along. So they can try to mind game you back, and this is a big reason I don't think Bowshek sees a lot of play. How do we counter this? How do we make this only a mind game for our opponent? Well, Intelligence Agent is going to be how we do that with our last crew slot. Normally when we're going to ram somebody with Boykin, we're going to be fairly close to them, at least range 1 to 2. So Intelligence Agent, if they're already that close at the start of the activation phase, now we can look at their dial. We know what they selected, and with a little bit of foreknowledge on what might be to the left or to the right, we know that, well, it's going to be suboptimal for me to make them Bowshek that maneuver. Or we can see that they dialed up what would be a very bad move for them in order to select the correct move when we activate Bowshek, and now we just don't, and they have to perform that bad move that they selected. Now the mind games only work one way. And to continue with that, cluster mines. Boykin is susceptible from people getting behind him. Now he can't flip around too terribly easy without Daredevil. However, we've solved that problem. But at the same time, there's still the threat of people getting behind you and just trying to stay on your tail. Cluster mines are a great threat. We would drop 3 bomb tokens, and for each one a ship hits, they're going to roll 2 red dice. And if they get a hit or a crit result, they're going to take damage for each of those. So keep in mind that cluster mines on something like Boykin, the threat is sometimes better than just dropping them. If you have a good opportunity, then by all means go ahead and drop the cluster mines, do some damage, and scoot away. But oftentimes what I've found is that the threat of the cluster mines keep them off your tail and keep them where you can keep ramming them. So I would say that be very careful with when you drop those cluster mines. So that's our first pilot. And the next one that we have up, our wingman, we need something with consistent damage output. Somebody that's scary enough that now the opponent doesn't know who to go after first. So we're going to utilize Quickdraw. Quickdraw is an amazing pilot right now. Pilot skill 9. And the ability is that every time that you lose your first shield in a round, you get to perform a primary weapon attack. It could be at the front, it could be at the back. As long as you have a target to shoot at, you can perform an attack when you lose a shield the first time in a round. This can make people not want to shoot at Quickdraw at all off the top. So how do we work on that fear? Well, pretty much stapled to every TIE SF, and for good reason, because it's 0 points and there's no negative effect to it, is Special Ops Training. This title is going to allow you to add a die when you're shooting out the front, or you can take 2 shots, one out the front, one out the back. If you have enemy ships in both arcs, this can be really nice. Now you have 2 shots, and if you get hit and lose a shield, now you can do that again and have 4 shots. So people are sometimes scared to even shoot at Quickdraw. How do we work on that fear even more? Well, we're going to add Ruthlessness into the mix. This is an elite pilot talent you don't see very often, but when we hit an enemy with our attack, we have to choose a ship at range 1, usually going to be another enemy ship, and we do 1 damage to them. At times this can work against you if Boykin is the only ship at range 1 of that opponent, then we have to do the damage to Boykin, but he's got enough beef that he can handle that. It does not trigger when Quickdraw itself is the only ship at range 1, so generally this is going to be useful for swarms or ships that are running around with Biggs and Lowrick, as it's another free damage that can't be avoided as long as we hit with our attack. And when utilized with Special Ops training, those 4 attacks that we can do, Ruthlessness will trigger on each one of those. So keep that in mind. That's 4 free damage that we can do, plus Boykin's 2 ramming. There's a lot of free damage that we're just throwing out there. To keep ourselves consistently damaging opponents with Quickdraw, we're going to put Fire Control System on. So now once you acquire a target and you fire, you're going to get a target lock after the attack is resolved for your future attacks against that one ship. This sets us up for solid primary weapon attacks. It also gets us ready to fire our harpoon missiles. Harpoons are great. It's a 4-die attack at range 2 to 3. The enemy doesn't get a add-in defensive bonuses if they're at range 3, so it already is paying for itself right there, and it's a strong missile. If we can hit with it, we're going to apply the harpooned condition. Now this condition has a little bit of confusion around it, but essentially how this functions is that after we hit with a harpoon missile attack, now that attack resolves and the harpoon condition goes onto the ship for future attacks. And if we can hit that ship while the condition is still active, then it splashes if we can get a uncancelled crit result. And every ship at range 1 of that opposing ship with this condition is going to take splash damage. Now, they can try to get rid of this themselves, but in order to do so, the ship with this condition has to spend their action, roll a red die, and on a hit or a crit, they suffer damage anyway for trying to remove the harpoon. So you're increasing your 4-die harpoon missile attack to now essentially a potential 5 damage that it can dish out. So we really want the harpoon to trigger. It's another set of damage that Lowrick, Biggs, they can't stop you from damaging their friends. It's just more free damage. So we want this attack to hit, so we're going to have guidance chips on. 1, it saves us some points on our modification slot, and we get to change a die during our harpoon missile to a hit result. Just any one of them, it doesn't matter. Very nice way to make sure that our harpoons go through. Another thing, actually, before I move on, harpoon missiles, while you have to have a target lock in order to fire, you don't have to spend it to fire the missile. So you can utilize it on modification. So now you can have a target lock and focus missile attack to increase the likelihood that we're going to hit. The last upgrade of this list is going to be Pattern Analyzer. Pattern Analyzer opens up Quickdraw's dial. So now if we need to do a 1 or 3 hard turn, we need to do a sloop maneuver, we can do that without fear of losing our action because we get to perform the action before we take the stress from the red move. So this adds a lot of versatility to Quickdraw. We can see what's going on. We can sloop and then barrel roll, or sloop and then focus. It's a really nice way to get Quickdraw to do what it is he needs to do in a single round. So yeah, if we have any questions, go ahead and post them in the comments. And if this is a list that you feel like running, feel free to take it, run wild with it. If you want to see me run this list, I am actually so confident in this list, I'm running it in my Vassal League, and you can see that in a link in the description below. But otherwise, take this list, have fun with it, and good hunting. Sci-Fighter out.